This week's Music Biz Weekly podcast, we talked to Stephen Parker, Executive Director at the National Independent Venue Association, NIVA, and he brings us up to speed on what this recent Live Nation case, the judgment, potential appeal, what the outcome could mean to artists, independent venues, and fans. This is quite informative. If you don't quite know what's been going on with Live Nation, give this a listen. I think you're going to enjoy it.
Welcome to the Music Biz Weekly podcast, celebrating over 15 years and over 600 weekly episodes, where Michael Brandvold and Blasco, two longtime music industry pros, discuss the very latest trends, tools, and tactics that you need to succeed in this new music business.
The Music Biz Weekly podcast has moved to a brand new YouTube channel. Please hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss future episodes.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Music Biz Weekly podcast. I'm Michael. I'm flying solo this week. Blasco is at the Rockville Festival. And we're just going to get right into it. We've got a great guest, some great information that I think everybody, including fans, if you're just a fan who likes to follow the podcast, you're going to find this interesting. Stephen is from the National Independent Venue Association, NIVA, and he's sitting down to talk to us about this recent Live Nation case, the upcoming judgment, potential appeal, and what the outcome could be, what the verdict could be, and more importantly, what this could mean to artists, independent venues, and fans. What does this mean to ticket prices? What does this mean to venues? What does this mean to everything? What could happen here? This is a great discussion, so let it roll and we'll see you at the end.
Visit www.musicbizweeklypodcast.com, subscribe on YouTube, follow and rate us on Spotify, subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. We appreciate your support.
Music Biz Weekly podcast. We are really excited today to have Stephen Parker, who's the Executive Director of National Independent Venue Association, NIVA, N-I-V-A, join us today. And Stephen, let me give you an opportunity to give us like the 2-minute elevator pitch of who you are and what NIVA is for those who aren't familiar.
For sure. And thanks for having us, Michael. National Independent Venue Association is the national trade organization for independent venues, festivals, promoters, presenters. If you have a stage or put on shows on the stage that is live in nature, you are an independent stage. And we were formed in April of 2020 in the midst of pandemic-fueled closures. During the first 8 months of this organization, it was a volunteer organization that advocated for what is still today the largest arts investment in U.S. history. And we exist now as an advocate within the industry, an advocate at the federal level, the state level, and increasingly the local level. And we also exist as a service for the industry. We have a group discount program that's accessible to the entire industry, regardless of whether you're a member or not, to make sound equipment, food, beverage, everything cheaper. And also we do our part to make sure that people know who independent venues are. That is why we're here. That is why we advocate, and that's why we tell the story of independent stages.
So just to be clear, this is for venues. It's not for independent artists, correct?
It's for the people who do shows. We have venue in our name, but it's actually venues, promoters, festivals.
So I mean, as an artist, if you're booking and promoting yourself, you could become part of this.
We are happy to help any artist who is on their own.
Perfect.
Make some connections, but our conference, which we'll talk about, is a great opportunity for artists, and especially artists who are booking themselves, to come and meet new bookers who are looking for new talent for their stages.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, the premise of this discussion today is all around the recent Live Nation case, which, given that our listeners and viewers are part of the music business, they should have at least heard about this? Do they really know what it was about, what the outcome is? And where I want to dig in with you is, what does this mean to them? What is this going to mean to potentially mean to independent venues, to our independent artists, and the fans at the end of the day?
So let's start at the beginning. In 2009, Live Nation announced that they would be acquiring Ticketmaster. In 2010, the Obama administration ignored the warnings of artists, venues, festivals. NIVA didn't exist at that time. We would have opposed it if we had existed at that time as well. And ultimately, the Obama administration made a terrible mistake and approved that merger. Live Nation in the subsequent 15 years turned into a behemoth. They already were a behemoth, but they became a vertically integrated behemoth.
They went from an 800-pound gorilla to a 2,000-pound gorilla.
Well, that, and they've multiplied their revenue by about 10 times in that 15 years. And ultimately, what that did, and the subsequent acquisitions that happened because of that, artist management companies formed, acquired, regional promoters formed, acquired, ticketing companies acquired,
merchandise
companies acquired. They became a very effective industry vacuum cleaner, sucking up everything that they could. And ultimately, what caused the DOJ to be comfortable with the approval of this merger is a consent decree, which said what Live Nation could do and couldn't do in terms of competitiveness. They violated the first consent decree. In 2020, a second consent decree was put in place with an independent monitor to go to the courts and say, Live Nation's violating this, you need to do something. Did they violate the second consent decree? Yes, they did. And ultimately, once there was substantive proof that Live Nation had violated that second consent decree, the U.S. Department of Justice and the Biden administration said, we're going to sue them. They sued them for monopolization of a variety of markets, which we'll get into in a minute. Then we changed presidents, and the new Department of Justice continued this case. NIVA brought promoters and artists to go meet with the U.S. Department of Justice under the Trump administration to talk about this case. The folks that were in the antitrust division expressed a strong commitment to this case. And then those people were fired. And there was a settlement, all within the course of less than a month, including the first week of the trial. I don't think there's anybody who thought that we would get to the trial starting and then see the Department of Justice fold. But yet that's exactly what happened. You can read the Wall Street Journal story that alleges the behind the scenes of how that happened. But allegedly, one of the largest super agents that's ever existed in the history of music and film called the president and said, why hasn't this been settled yet? And then the president called the DOJ. And within 2 days, Michael Rapino was in DC, signing an agreement that nobody knew about for another 5 days, which the judge didn't like very much. So the important thing to note is that 34 state attorneys general set on a bipartisan basis, Republicans and Democrats, said that makes no sense. This case that was brought against Live Nation was brought with 40 state attorneys general. 6 said, we're going to settle. 34 said, no, we're going to keep going. So after a week break, the attorneys generals went back to court with the DOJ gone, all the people that they were planning on arguing this case not there, and a new counsel that was hired 5 days before he had to start arguing this case. And I'll just tell you, if you read many of the media reports, much of the content on social media, analysis from legal analysts, they didn't give those AGs much of a chance of winning. But yet the AGs did. On August 15th, about 3 weeks ago, the jury came back and unanimously said that Live Nation had monopolized the ticketing market. They had monopolized the major concert venue market, and they had used their promotion services and tied illegally their promotion services to all of those markets that they monopolized. And then in addition, the jury ruled that Live Nation charged more for tickets than their closest competitors. Now we wait. Today, which is Thursday, May 7th, Monday, 4 days later when this is aired, ultimately there was a hearing today where they talked about the process moving forward. The judge was there, Live Nation's attorneys were there, the AGs were there, and ultimately the AGs indicated that they intend to be aggressive, including pursuing a breakup of Live Nation into at least two companies, potentially more. The precedent is there for that to happen. The facts of the case support Live Nation's breakup, but the facts of the case also support Live Nation not being able to have the same leverage that they used to monopolize the market. And that leverage in every single circumstance that was presented in this case was their control of content, their control of the tours. And ultimately, independent venues and festivals and more believe that a breakup is not enough. You have got to make sure that they don't continue to have the leverage that they have had. And that leverage is the shows, and that should be limited as well.
So I guess, the big question, and I can imagine listeners and viewers are just going to get right to, well, what does this mean to me as an artist? What does this mean to be as a ticket buying fan? We've heard, I don't know how long ago was it, that, oh yeah, there's no all fees are going to be disclosed up front. They're going to be bundled into one value you can see. And the thought was, oh, that just means I thought I was going to get cheaper fees. The fees weren't going to be what. No, now they're just telling you all those fees. So nothing really changed in the pricing, was my understanding. What does this mean, or what could this mean to independent artist venues and fans? I guess, let me ask it this way: in a best case scenario and a most likely case scenario, what kind of end results are we going to have here?
So Ticketmaster sold 346 million tickets in 2025. The jury came back and said that Live Nation / Ticketmaster was liable for overcharging more than their competitors, which makes them liable for about $5.16 a ticket. The average that they overcharged was $1.72. Under antitrust law, that number is tripled, so that's $5.16. Just for 1 year, if Live Nation were to be liable for that amount, they would owe a very large number. Approximately $1.7 billion based on my rough math right here. That's 1 year. 1 year. Yes, that would be great for fans and artists and venues to be made whole in some way because of the overcharging that has happened, but that's not going to fix anything. It's not going to fix
No,
anything.
right.
Money
I mean,
isn't going to fix this. Live Nation writing a big check isn't going to fix this. Live Nation, the best example of a company or companies having to pay for mistakes that they made is tobacco companies in the 1990s, who, in a similar case, all the AGs brought cases, and the company settled, and that turned into $17 billion. $20 billion over a 20-year period that continues to flow into the states for different things. $20 billion that Live Nation has to pay over 15 years or 10 years or 5 years is not going to fix this. The only thing that's going to fix it is structural behavioral remedies that are enforced. So what does this case mean for fans? Right now, nothing, because there haven't been any remedies put in place. But ultimately, is this going to lead to lower ticket prices? It could if there's more competition, but will it be noticeable? Probably not.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Would it be significantly enough lowering prices where you're like, okay, I can afford to go to more shows now, or is it just going to be a very small incremental drop?
Well, I think the important thing to note is this, and that is that Live Nation, this is part of the case. Live Nation has been able to subsidize and take losses on their shows, according to the U.S. Department of Justice and 40 state attorneys general's case against them, by subsidizing their losses and promotions with their Ticketmaster revenue and with their advertising and sponsorship revenue. If they are if they are not able to subsidize their promotions anymore and they actually have to live like the rest of us have to live and that they need to make money in order to keep their doors open, it may lead to more competitiveness and that may lead to more money saved by the consumer. Here's the problem. It will be years, if that happens, before consumers start to see it in the bottom line. And even if it leads to less money that has to be paid by a consumer on fees or on ticket prices or on both, prices are going to keep rising until those remedies are put in place. And ultimately, while I think that there could be a slowing of the inflation that we've seen on the concert ticketing market and comedy, live performance, all of the above, and there could be a decrease in prices, I question again how noticeable it will be. I just want to note that according to Polestar, the average club ticket price is around $33, $34. We represent arenas as well. And comparatively, I think that if you look at independent venues, shows at independent venues or shows by independent promoters and independent venues, and then you look at Live Nation shows, the total cost, I'd like to think that we're lower. Certainly anecdotal evidence shows that independents charge less. Maybe not in every circumstance, but in many, if not most circumstances, they do. So the question is, what does this mean? And ultimately, I would just like to say that while consumers probably want lower ticket prices and we want that for them, and at independent venues, we are delivering that to them, in my opinion, there are more important things than ticket prices lowering. The survival
Sure.
of the small businesses and nonprofits that are necessary for the survival of up-and-coming artists and artists that will never reach that arena level, that will never reach that amphitheater level, that will never reach that stadium level is important. 64% of the independent venues, festivals, and promoters that I represent were not profitable last year. Live Nation made $25 billion plus. What's wrong here? What's wrong here is that there's little competition. What's wrong here is that Live Nation has buying power over the artists, control due to their contract terms over the artists that needs to go away. So while this may not lead to a significant drop in ticket prices, there are more important things to preserve here, which is making sure that artists of every stripe have a place to play and making sure that small businesses and nonprofits have an opportunity to survive. That's what this verdict can deliver if the AGs and the court do this right.
If I don't know what the right word is, a favorable verdict is brought down.
It has been brought down. They're liable, but go ahead.
The impact to the artists, are artists hoping to get more opportunities to play? Could this mean less opportunities? Could this be less money? We talked about ticket prices to the fan. What about the artists that, there's so many artists that are not signing on and doing a full Live Nation promoted tour, but there might be spot dates that are Live Nation. How is this going to impact those artists?
This shouldn't change anything for them. Live Nation, if Live Nation is broken up from Ticketmaster and artist management is broken off of Live Nation, they're split into three companies. The same thing that was true about the largest promoter in the world, which is Live Nation's largest promoter in the world, will be true after. They are still the largest promoter in the world. They just have to come back down to earth. They have to come back down to earth. They have to live like the rest of us have to live. And so ultimately, we believe this will create more opportunities for artists. We believe that if there are more opportunities, here's the problem. The problem is that Live Nation can make one call and book an entire tour.
Right.
Sometimes independent venues don't even know that they're going to be that shows are even available to be bought until the tour Matt comes out. That's a significant problem. It's a significant problem underneath this case because of the tying charge that they were found liable for. Live Nation has to lose the leverage in order for there to be competition restored in ticketing, major concert venues, and the entire live entertainment industry. And so ultimately, we believe that artists will have more choice if Live Nation is reined in the way that we believe the case supports them being reined in.
Will this also, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but it's more of how will this impact all of the Live Nation exclusive venues that, if you're going to play that venue, it's a Live Nation owned venue. It's a Ticketmaster only venue. Would this potentially break up Live Nation's ability to own all these venues of various sizes?
The case supports that. The case says that Live Nation had monopolization of an artist-facing major concert venue and amphitheater market. So the nearly 100 amphitheaters that Live Nation controls, operates, exclusively books, all of the above, some of the above, the major concert venues that they rent out and control and have a great deal of leverage over because of those Ticketmaster contracts, the courts could conceivably say you can't own those anymore. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. Will that impact artists? I mean, the major artists, the Beyoncés of the world, the Taylor Swifts of the world, the Luke Combs of the world, they can get shows
Anywhere.
anywhere,
Yeah.
right? So there are plenty of other places to play if they are not Live Nation. But there's also an opportunity for Live Nation to invest in regional promoters to take over those amphitheaters if they're forced to divest. I think the core of this issue is where does Live Nation's leverage lie, and how do you take away the leverage that they use to build an illegal monopoly? And ultimately, we think that the venues are a problem, and if they had to divest, that's a positive thing, but that alone will not fix this.
Is there a risk that if they have to divest some of these venues that they own and operate, that those venues might disappear, go out of business because they could only survive with Live Nation supporting them, and if they're on their own, they're not. Could we lose venues?
I mean, conceivably, but let me give you an example where I think in the majority of cases that would not be the case. There is a beautiful amphitheater in downtown Nashville, right off of Broadway, called Ascend. Live Nation controlled that venue for 10 years. The reason they controlled that venue is that they won I don't know if it was competitive, but they won a bid to manage, operate, book, control every aspect of that venue for 10 years. When their 10 years came up, many promoters, national, local, regional, stepped up to apply and say, we want a shot to promote it. And ultimately, Live Nation was in that bid as well, and they lost. And the Opry came in to manage that venue, and they took it over earlier this year. I would imagine that if amphitheaters became available and they were in profitable markets, and clearly with Live Nation, they're choosing they wouldn't be spending so much money on acquiring venues and building new venues and markets if they didn't think it was profitable. I think that there will be a long line, in most, if not all markets, of regional promoters, other national promoters, other aspiring national or regional promoters that want to get larger or want to do more shows or want to cover a broader area, that will be more than willing to take over the leasing, the management, the renting, whatever that might be, of many, if not all, of those venues.
So could we see the sort of rebirth of regional and local promoters?
The merger, in our opinion, are why regional and local promoters went away. And yes, I am sitting here in a very biased position representing many of those regional promoters. that are fighting tooth and nail every day to try to survive in an industry that has been built to work against them. And ultimately, I think that a goal should be for us to, regardless of what happens with Live Nation, to bring back the regional promoter. This is good for the industry. It's also good for local jobs. It is amazing to me that there are not enough conversations around Live Nation coming in to a community. In many cases, communities spending a lot of money to, because Live Nation lobbyists go and ask for it, to have Live Nation come in and displace local shows. The city of Richmond, Virginia committed $37 million in incentives for Live Nation to build a $29 million amphitheater. I don't know how you commit more incentives to than what the amphitheater actually cost, but they did. But ultimately, there are regional promoters in that area that got nothing or got very little from the city over a period of years and generations. Ultimately, when a dollar is spent in a Live Nation venue, it, yes, goes into the salary of somebody local, but beyond that, it's going into the pockets of people who work out of an office in Beverly Hills, California. When regional promoters and local promoters and independent venues are booking shows, that money stays in the community. It stays in the community. And is that a part of this case? No. All of the things that I am talking about what this case supports in terms of structural and behavioral remedies that will reign in Live Nation have everything to do with this case. Money staying in the community is not a part of this case, but it could be a byproduct of some of the structural and behavioral remedies that we hope that attorneys general are considering.
If this ends up breaking up the Live Nation Ticketmaster alliance into two separate entities, those of us who are old enough and have been around long enough remember when it was that way, when Live Nation was separate and Ticketmaster was separate. And there wasn't a lot of love for Ticketmaster in that situation back in ye old days.
Those ye old days of 2008. Yes.
Exactly. I just wonder, will this, whether it's deserved or not, Ticketmaster has always been a company with a bullseye on its back by artists, especially by fans, since day one of Ticketmaster's existence. Is this going to correct anything in the Ticketmaster world? Or is it just going to give you two problems now to deal with?
I think you just have to look at the facts of the case. And I know this sounds like it's starting as a boring answer, but I promise it'll get more interesting. The facts of the case say this. The facts of the case say that Live Nation used leverage to monopolize the venue-facing ticketing market. That leverage was the fact that Live Nation did a lot of shows, exclusive tours, right? If that goes away, if Ticketmaster and Live Nation are split up and Live Nation can only book, let's say 50% of any artist tour over the course of a year, it will change. And ultimately, from where we sit, there are other companies that are able to step in and compete with Ticketmaster that don't have that same leverage that Ticketmaster's had, which is the tours. And ultimately, there was, in the hours after the trial, you started to see the stock of some resale companies go up, because there was this idea that the resale markets are the competition of Live Nation and Ticketmaster, the competition of Ticketmaster specifically. Maybe on resale they are, but not on primary. They are not. The competition are the independent ticketing companies that have been doing the work and working with independent venues and trying to get larger contracts with arenas. Not every ticketing company can afford retaliation insurance. There was noted examples from two very large ticketing companies that talked about how when they went in to try to convince somebody to switch from Ticketmaster to them, that they, in some circumstances, had to put in place retaliation insurance in case Live Nation took away shows from those larger venues. There are ticketing companies that just can't afford to do that. And ultimately, that proves the whole point of why Live Nation was an illegal monopoly. And so ultimately, Ticketmaster will continue to be unpopular. But I don't think that has much to do with us. Like Ticketmaster has been it has been described to me as the boogeyman, and that's the way they were designed. And you know what? That's fine. If people want to choose Ticketmaster based on the merits of the product that's there, not because they feel coerced into choosing Ticketmaster so they continue to have shows, let them. But ultimately, what we hope will happen is that there will be more etixes and dices and Eventbrites and Eventums and others who have very good ticketing services who will step in and actually have a chance, unlike what exists now, which is Live Nation's legal monopolization of that market.
Is there going to be any outcome from this that could potentially? All right. I mean, there was when this first came down back in mid-April, people were talking about a little line that said, "Oh, Live Nation needs to provide upon request customer data to the fan, to the
The
artists."
artist. Yeah.
Which, as somebody who's worked with artists for decades, I've always said, goodness, if we could just get our customer email, our fans' emails from Ticketmaster who bought our tickets, we could promote to them. Well, that's always the wish of every artist, and it's never been a reality. Is that something that could potentially come out of this? That there could be more openness and cooperation from the ticketing companies back to the artists, as opposed to it's our data, we're siloing it, you're never going to see it.
So let's talk about Live Nation. The answer is that is going to happen with Live Nation and Ticketmaster because Live Nation already committed to it. The settlement that Live Nation came to with the U.S. Department of Justice that ultimately was rejected by the AGs who ultimately won the case. I think you can argue that that's the only thing in there that even comes close to meaning anything. And that thing that's in there is that Ticketmaster and Live Nation agree to provide to artists in states where it's legal upon request, ensuring no other laws or privacy rules are being violated, some of that data. Live Nation and Ticketmaster lose nothing by providing that data because they are an illegal monopoly. So it's not like that data can be used against them. They already have that control. And so ultimately, it is one thing for Live Nation to get a sweetheart deal. It's another thing for that deal to actually like make it to the end of the road. And it's hard for me to see if Live Nation reversing on that commitment, given that they still need artists once they're broken up to choose them. Even if they can't, even if they are restricted in certain regards as far as what their tours can do or what they can do with Ticketmaster. So I think that the commitment that Live Nation made will either they will continue to make voluntarily or they will be forced to make by the courts or by the US DOJ given that settlement.
In a case like this, because I've also had a lot of experience over decades dealing with email lists and opt-ins and everything, what do you feel like is the reality that there isn't going to be a million hoops that have to be jumped through to access and acquire that data that basically say, you know what, at the end of the day, the fan didn't opt in to have this data shared with other parties, and therefore we can't share it with you.
So in some states that may be the case based on how the laws are written, but in the majority of states we don't think that'll be the case. We don't know what hoops Live Nation's going to, if this happens, what hoops they're going to make artist teams jump through in order to get that data. But ultimately, I think to answer your question, there are some states where it will be very hard for that to happen. But I don't think it's the majority, and I don't think that should be a reason that would not be a reason for Live Nation to not do this just based on my cursory review of the laws.
That would, I mean, as the marketing person, that would be exciting. That would be really exciting to be able to access your artists' fans who have actually spent money to buy tickets to promote your next tour to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the again, Live Nation is the 1,800-pound gorilla in the room. I don't think it costs them anything to do that at all. So we'll see if
It's
it
probably
actually
going to,
happens.
I think, as you alluded to, it's probably going to come down to the various laws state by state
Yeah.
that have been put in place that will make it easy or impossible.
I, I don't, I think even where those laws exist, I don't necessarily think that it's impossible. You have to take additional care to ensure that those laws are followed in the sharing of that data.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. But it's, yeah, I mean, I think in a general sense, companies don't like to share customer data with anybody else. They put up a lot of walled gardens around customer data so they can be the only ones to have access to it. Because I think everybody knows at the end of the day, that customer data is the absolute gold at the end of the rainbow.
It is. The question is how will is that enough alone to restore what artists think
To, to, yes.
need to exist in order for them to have a better experience in this market? And I think that that is perhaps a good first step from Live
I
Nation.
was just going to say that
But
could be the
yeah,
first and
yeah,
easiest step for artists to feel a win.
yeah.
So as we wrap up here, what are we looking at in timelines for anything to happen here? I mean,
The
are we sitting here going, hey, this is all great. There's great potential here, but if this happens in the next 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, what are we potentially looking at in front of us?
I mean, the attorneys general stood in a courtroom in Manhattan today and said that they would have remedies delivered to the court and potentially the next month. The question is, how fast will the court move? I think that we will have answer. Well, Live Nation is going to appeal. Live Nation is trying to delay the consideration of court-ordered remedies until the proceeding about their sad excuse for settlement moves through the federal process. And there has to be a public review. The AGs say, no way. We're going to do this all at one time. If the AGs get their way, I think by late fall, early winter, we will know what remedies are going to be put
We
in
will know
place.
the remedies, but then to actually implement those remedies.
It depends on the timeline that the court puts in place. I mean, we would, all deliver at speed, right? Like we would push for, and we believe the AGs would push for all deliver at speed. The question is, what is that? I mean, how long does it take to divest from the largest ticketing company in the world?
Sure.
I don't know. 18 months? That seems like an interesting starting point. 12 months? 6 months? 6 months seems short. But maybe, I mean, if the court says they have to do it, they have to do it. I'll also just look at the timelines that was put in place for the mandated divestiture of TikTok to be sold to a US company. I mean, that was about a 6 month process. It could be 6 months, who knows? But ultimately, structural separation, we think, is very likely. We don't think it's certain, but we think that it is certainly very possible. And ultimately, I think that within 18 months, we could start to see a new live entertainment landscape if Live Nation is reined in the way that we hope the AGs and the courts should do.
It will be a very interesting next 12 to 18 months for sure,
For sure.
for everybody in the music industry. Because, I mean, as you pointed out at the very beginning, Live Nation owns merchandise companies, management companies. They own all sorts of pieces of the overall business, not just selling you a ticket. This could have a ripple effect all across the industry.
Well, we think it's a necessary ripple effect that hopefully will be meaningful. What happened in 2010 to rein in Live Nation's new merger was not meaningful. What happened in 2020 after they violated that consent decree was not meaningful. The question is what is actually going to lead to meaningful now? Those remedies have to be accompanied by enforcement. They have to be accompanied by clear processes for people to get courts to act quickly. Once it is clear, if it becomes clear that Live Nation violated some part of whatever these court mandated orders will be, and ultimately we'll see where we end up. But we have faith. We have faith that hopefully courts and AGs will do the right thing.
Hopefully independent artists, venues, and fans will feel better when this is all resolved.
Let's hope. Let's hope it's actually resolved. We will definitely feel better.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah.
Stephen, so if any of our listeners want more information to contact you or NIVA or just stay up to date, where should they go? Where can they go to get info and stay up with what's going on?
You can just Google our name and see the latest things that we're doing on Live Nation, which is National Independent Venue Association. But if you want to get involved, if you want to act, if you want to reach out to your AG and say that what they're doing on Live Nation is important, thank you for what you're doing, go to saveourstages.com, spend 90 seconds filling out a form, and that form will send a message of thanking your AG and directly to the people in those offices that are working on this case every day. And we would encourage you to do so. Those OGs need encouragement. They did the right thing. There was a lot of doubt about whether they could succeed after the federal government walked away from this case, and they had a clean sweep. And ultimately, if they can do that, they can make sure that clean sweep in terms of the Live Nation verdict can actually lead to change for all of us, especially the artists who need to make sure that this industry exists for them.
Stephen, thank you so much for sitting down and at least for me, helping paint a clearer picture of what happened, what's happening, and what could happen. Because this is clearly, it's in the news, but I don't think a lot of people quite understand all the nuances of what's going on.
Well, we appreciate the education that you provide in order to make sure that people do understand the nuances of not just this, but a lot of stuff. We're big fans and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you.
What a fascinating conversation. I want to thank Stephen once again for sitting down with us and walking us through this whole Live Nation judgment, settlement, everything that was going on around this. It will be an interesting next few months, years to see how this plays out. But this is something that everybody, musician, artists of all levels, big, small, everybody in the industry needs to pay attention to what's going on here, because this is going to have an impact one way or another on what's going on in our business. So as Stephen said, once again, just Google National Independent Venue Association or Save Our Stages. Head over there and do what you can. Support the effort, support the artists, support the independent venues, promoters, artists. And once again, a quick shout out to Bruce, Jeremy at Hypebot. Thank you for everything you do to support the Music Biz Weekly podcast. And we will see everybody next week.
Every month, thousands of musicians and industry professionals listen to the Music Biz Weekly podcast. If you have a product or service and would like to reach this audience, get in touch with Michael to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
Voices for the Music Biz Weekly podcast provided by LarryDavisVoice.com.